Hello, and welcome to episode number 216 of the Savvy Social Podcast. This is a show dedicated to helping passion-led online business owners and entrepreneurs learn how to use social media as a tool to grow your business. I'm your host, ANDREA Jones, and I'm fiercely committed to helping you understand both the how and the why of social media marketing so that you can create connection, build community, and make your difference in the world. This show is brought to you by Sendable, which is the all-in-one social media platform that my agency uses every day to manage and analyze our social media results. You can try them out for yourself by going to OnlineDrea.com/Sendable. And I'll put that link and all the links in the show notes. You can find those at OnlineDrea.com/216 for today's links. All right. So I'm going to do a podcast episode today on this idea of authenticity and transparency on social media. And I think that as business owners, as personality brands, we observe what's happening in our industry. We see people crying on their social media. We see people posting their kids having a breakdown. We see people snapping photos of their lunch. We see people documenting their entire traveling adventure. And then we look at ourselves as business owners and go, how do we fit into all of this? How can we show up in a way that still is personable and connects with other people, but isn't showing the sides of our lives and our businesses that maybe we don't feel comfortable with? And a lot of people teach this strategy. One of my favorite people who I love a lot of what he says, and I have a lot of challenges with some of the things he says, is Gary Vaynerchuk, pivotal person in the digital marketing space, really paved the way for a lot of the social media strategies that, I teach, a lot of people teach in this idea of giving and being really, generous with your time in this new marketing medium. Now, Gary V says to document, don't educate. So document instead of educating. And I think sometimes we think that documentation means documenting our lives, documenting every little thing. My dog takes a poop, I'm taking a picture and posting it on social media. And my clarification of this document, don't educate, is that social media should really be a reflection of what's happening in your business. And this is where authenticity comes from. And I think sometimes we try to project something that's not there. So we try to show off maybe a perfectly polished situation that's not polished, or we try to craft some sort of social media statement that is a huge lift because it's not what's currently like the conversations happening in our business. So social media is a reflection of what's happening in your business. And that's how you get authenticity. Now, where the transparency piece comes in is that you don't necessarily have to share everything. Okay. So an example would be if you had a tough conversation with a team member today, maybe you even had to let someone go. You're not necessarily going to reflect that back on social media. So I'm not talking about reflecting back the day-to-day happenings of your business. What I am saying is that social media can reflect the values of your business currently as they are. The social media can reflect the conversations that you're having with your clients, the questions that they ask, the challenges that they have, how you help support them with those challenges. You see how social media can reflect that in a very authentic way. And authenticity to me is different from transparency. So authenticity means showing up accurately on social media. So where you are in your business today. Transparency goes a step further and to me shares everything. Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that specifically. So if you feel comfortable sharing your entire life on social media, this podcast episode isn't for you. But for those of us who feel like, we don't want to share everything on social media and we feel that dissonance between, it seems like everyone else is sharing everything and I want to be authentic, but I don't feel comfortable with some things sharing on social media. So to me, authenticity is showing up truthfully and accurately. So authenticity is showing up truthfully and accurately, whereas transparency is sharing all of the things. Now, as a business owner, showing up in a transparent way could also be authentic, but it could cause harm to you if you're entirely transparent. So an example would be, like I mentioned earlier, the idea of letting go of a team member. It's not just your story that you're sharing other folks' story as well. So that transparency could be crossing a line. You could cause harm to your personal image or your business's image if you're sharing your failures as they're happening instead of sharing them as lessons learned. Okay, so one of the ways that I like to show up authentically is to share my failures as lessons learned. I actually did an entire podcast episode on lessons learned a few episodes back. I'll put the link in the show notes because to me, that is a way to show up authentically and not share the transparent moments as they're happening. Because honestly, there's not a lot of perspective for me in sharing a quote unquote failure as it's happening. I'd rather have it happen, reflect back on it, and grow from it. So an example would be in 2018, I had 2 pillar clients in my business, lost them both at the same time, had to cut back my team hours. It was one of the only times in history where my business was almost in the red that month. It was a very tough time. And I didn't talk about it on the podcast then, right? I was chugging away talking about marketing and getting more clients and really understanding why that situation happened. And now, 4 years later, I can look back and say, oh, here's why that happened. Here's the lesson that I learned. And I can teach things like, to my social media mentees, here's how to price yourself appropriately so that you don't make the same mistake I did. Okay, so that's an example of authenticity versus transparency. And one of the things I've been talking a lot about and thinking a lot about when this comes to me in my life is my cute little baby. So for those of you who don't know, I had a baby it'll be about 5 months from the time this episode will come out. And I posted her on social media when she was first born. I talked a lot about being pregnant when I was pregnant and in that journey. And I have one video where you can see her hands in the video. Those posts with her as a newborn and her with the hands in the video made me feel very uncomfortable, beyond uncomfortable. And I think the reason is I see the worst of social media. I see how negative people can be. I see how judgy they could be. And I don't want to put her in that situation being so young. I also see, recently I had someone steal my photos and try to sell their shady ass shit using my photos. That was annoying. I don't want that to happen with my baby. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with posting your kids on social media. In fact, I love it. I love seeing other people's kids. I love watching them grow. I feel a connection to them. But for my own kiddo, it started to feel weird. In a sense, I talk about being a mom. I talk about motherhood. I'm talking about my journey. I share a lot in my newsletter and on social media about the balance of doing this whole business thing and marketing thing and having a small child. But I have 3 main reasons why I'm not going to be transparent in the sense that I'm not going to share every single thing. I want to protect her privacy. A lot of people know Gibson, for instance. If you're watching the video version of this, Gibson's in the background. He's always here. And one of the things I noticed with Gibson is that people recognize him. They know him. People who I don't know personally will say, how's Gibson? And I didn't want that with her. The second reason is why I don't post her is I wanted her to kind of be able to choose. So when she becomes of the age of choosing, I want to give her that choice. And then again, the weirdos, people who steal pictures, the creeps out there in the world. This is how I maintain my privacy. I can still show up authentically without sharing every single photo of her. And y'all, she's super cute. So sometimes it's really hard, right? I literally start text conversations with people just by sending them photos because I still want my friends and family to enjoy how cute she is in her cute little baby stage. So that's my choice of showing up in an authentic way, still talking about motherhood, still sharing my personal journey, but not being overly transparent by sharing photos of her and sharing every aspect of her journey. This is my decision. And so when we think about this for you, I want you to think about what makes you comfortable. I don't want this to be a judgy conversation with yourself, with your colleagues, because it can easily turn that way, right? It can easily turn into a shame game. It can easily turn into something that's a should. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. You get to decide what this looks like for you. Don't let social media decide for you. Okay. Don't let other people decide for you. You decide. And you can still show up authentically. Like I said, Gibson is here. He is one of the things that sets me apart because a lot of people love him. I love having him here. Even though I did try to convince him for a while to sleep somewhere else, he wasn't having it. So he's here. He's part of my brand now and he likes it. And he's a dog. He likes the camera. My other dog doesn't even like the camera. So you don't even see him that much. So when I think about showing up in an authentic way, that's one of the ways that I made a decision to do. I made a decision to include Gibson in my marketing. And I want to share a few other ways that I show up authentically. And I want this to inspire you to think about how you can show up in an authentic way, meaning sharing yourself, your personality accurately, how you are today, without diving into being too overly transparent about, that crying session that you had in the shower the other day, right? So there's a few other ways I do this. Gibson, like I said, I also talk a lot about my love for RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm a little obsessed, y'all. I have watched every single season of the main show, of All Stars, different franchises like UK, Canada, Australia. So I'm a little obsessed, and it goes even farther than that because I also listen to a lot of podcasts with drag queens like Sibling Rivalry and Race Chaser. If you know, you know. Okay. So in my work, I'm probably going to throw in a RuPaul reference. I'm probably going to throw in a drag queen reference. I'm probably going to talk about it because it's very much a part of my life. And so that's how I can show up authentically. If I'm going to use an analogy, I'm going to talk about it. Or sometimes when I talk about how much I love the TikTok algorithm, it just shows me new drag queens all of the time. And a recent example of this is the algorithm's so good. It showed me a drag queen that's now competing on Canada's Drag Race. And I've been following her for a year on TikTok. So it kind of felt like a full circle moment. Anyways, I'm going to reference that in my work. Another show that I like is Schitt's Creek. I've watched that show 3 times now. I don't usually rewatch things. It's like a hard line for me. I watch something once and then I move on. But with Schitt's Creek, I loved it. I've watched it 3 times. I'm probably going to watch it again. And so I'm probably going to include some of those GIFs in my newsletters. When I post things in my community, for the Savvy Social School, I'm definitely going to use a GIF, from Schitt's Creek. I'm going to use references like, I love that for you. I love that journey for you, things like that. It's really about me showing up authentically and sharing in that way. Instead of the overly transparent, I'm literally sit down and watching this right now. One other example of this that I'll leave you with is vacations. I get this question a lot, from my business owner friends. And I feel, again, I see the worst of the internet. So I do think sometimes I'm overly cautious, and this is my opinion. You can decide for yourself, but I don't feel comfortable posting my vacation anymore as it's happening. Okay. So I don't post vacations as it's happening. Too many people know who I am. It's probably easy to figure out where I live. I talk about at least the city where I live, and then you could probably work backwards from there and figure out where I live. I don't want people knowing when I'm not home. So instead of posting about my vacation as it's happening, I'll still take photos and videos and things like that. And then I'll use those photos later and tie it into my business. So an example is if I'm going on vacation, let's say I'm going to Dominican Republic, which I'm totally craving right now because I haven't gone the whole pandemic and then I had a baby. So it may be a few more years before that happens. but I'm on a little beach vacation. So let's say I go on a little beach vacation. I don't tell the general public. I pre-schedule all my posts to go out as normal. They don't know I'm gone. And then when I get back, I may post a photo or two and tie it back into my work. So an example would be talking about how I pre-schedule my post so that I can go on vacation, right? I'm not saying like, here's a selfie by the beach for no reason. I'm saying here's a selfie by the beach because this is how it relates to my business, right? So you could do this in any number of ways. If you have a financial business and you're doing the same vacation, take your photos, yada, yada, yada. When you come back, you can say, do you want to go on your vacation and enjoy it without worrying about balancing your books? Hire us. You see how you could tie that in, right? You see how you could draw the line instead of being like, here's a margarita. You can tie it back in. So I want to end with this thought, which is you can show up authentically any number of ways. You can decide what you want to share and what you don't want to share. It doesn't have to be the transparent, we're sharing everything that's happening in our lives as it happens. But you can show up authentically in different verticals. You can decide, here's what I want to share. Here's what I don't want to share. As long as you tie it back into your business, I think it's a great way to show up on social media. It doesn't have to be all stuffy and buttoned up. You can still relax and have fun. Social media is fun anyways, but you can decide what that looks like for you and your business and based on your comfort level. Don't let anyone else tell you what it should be like. Post your kids, don't post your kids, right? Share your vacation, don't share your vacation, right? You can decide what those things look like, but I want to encourage you to think about ways you can always tie it back into your business. All right. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Savvy Social Podcast. Next week, I have Meryl Craigsman coming on the show. Oh my gosh, I've just been obsessed with her little Facebook community. She's a great example of showing up authentically. I joined her Facebook group. I knew of her for a while. We had a few different events, but I joined her Facebook group because she talked about spicy romance novels, which is my thing. And I was like, oh, I'm totally in. So that's how she shows up authentically, ties it back into her business in such a beautiful way. So we're going to have that conversation next week. I'll see you for that episode. In the meantime, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps support the show. For much of this year, we've been in the top 100 marketing podcasts, and that's because of you and your support, and I thank you so much for it. Otherwise, I'll see you on those social media streets. I'm at OnlineDrea. Hang out with me on Instagram. That's all for today. Bye for now.